coming to you from the mountains and the plains. The only conservative voices brave enough to push back. This is the Conservative Daily Podcast with Joe Altman.
That's what the Second Amendment was designed to do. If you're going to do something to nullify or take away my rights under the Constitution, come get it.
Max McGuire.
When you look at politicians on the left, they need to convince people that they are victims.
A resistance to the resistance. And now your hosts, Joe Altman and Max McGuire.
And welcome back to another edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. My name is Max McGuire.
And I'm Joe Altman.
And we have the unfortunate luck today to be competing with Sidney Powell in her press conference today. So that's going to be happening while we're live. So understand if people are going to go watch that, but definitely come back here once that is over. And if any news happens, we'll make sure that we include a cut of it in today's broadcast. But I want to talk today, Joe, about what happened yesterday in Michigan. So yesterday we talked about Arizona. We do actually have an update in Arizona. The Arizona GOP convinced a judge to let them look at 100 duplicate ballots. So these are ballots that come in and are either smudged or are folded up or crinkled, and the machines can't read them. So what happens is they take those duplicate ballots and they give them to someone else to those broken ballots, and they give them to someone else to duplicate them. And those people are supposed to duplicate them as seen. Well, what they found is after getting the judge to let them review 100 of them, they found that 2 included Trump votes that were taken from Trump. The original ballot was for Trump, and when someone duplicated them, one of them took the Trump vote, gave it to Biden. The other one just never filled in the Trump vote. So out of that sample size of 100 that the judge let them look at, they found that 2% resulted in Trump losing a vote. So that's a small sample size, but that's what the judge let them look at.
Right.
So now they're going to go back to the judge and say, hey, we need to look at all of these. 2% is a significant number, and there are thousands of these things. It's very easy to see the potential. Actually, I think there's tens of thousands. It's very easy to see the potential of this swinging Arizona. So good news coming out of Arizona. Just wanted to provide that update. Everyone, make sure that you hit that share button on Facebook. Give us a thumbs up, a like. On YouTube, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and comment. Really important because we are going up against a couple other things today. So help us break through the algorithms and get more eyeballs on the show today.
So I have some things that I want to talk about, if I can. And,
sure.
I want to, and the reason why I want to talk about these things is that I want to talk about the hypocrisy. I want to talk about what our job is at Conservative Daily, right? So, this came up, and, obviously Keith and I have been talking a little bit, and you talk to Keith every day with Josh and others. And, our job at Conservative Daily is to point out truth, right? And one of the things we've been really good at is pointing out the truth related to the hypocrisy of our leadership and the fraud that's present, right? And so we're talking about the fraud now. We broke the stuff on Eric Coomer. We broke the stuff on Dominion. It's now become the thing that everyone is talking about. You have information encoders and people all over the country that have come together and now are becoming the team of truth seekers. Like, these are people that are very authentic. They're just looking for truth. So, but we're also facing something else, right? So we have all of this stuff that's happening with the election, and we have, massive 74 million people that feel cheated. Nearly 50% of the people in this country, because of the voice that has been pushed out there and the information, feel like the election was fraudulent, that President Trump, that's a big number, right? Would you say, Max? Big number?
Yeah, it's a big number.
So, but the other side that we're dealing with is we are still dealing with this oppressive thing that's happening in our community, which is called the pandemic, right? This coronavirus, this COVID. And so the news media gets to pick and choose what they actually are going to cover or not going to cover. And so at Conservative Daily, one of the things that we've become really good at is just pointing out the obvious. And so this morning, through this meeting, we were talking about our leadership and the fact that you have Hancock in Colorado that frankly came out and said, hey, I want you to stay home for Thanksgiving, as he's getting on a plane to go to Mississippi with his family. Right? You have the mayor of San Francisco that says, hey, we're going to have to even put bigger restrictions on. Yet 2 weeks ago, she was in a restaurant with a bunch of people celebrating some socialite's birthday, breaking those rules. You have
the same day that she wanted to ban outdoor dining, she was seen dining outdoors.
right, and indoors. I mean, it was an indoor, partially enclosed area, right? So, but as we go down this list, you have people that say, "Hey, wear a mask," and then you have the governor of Polis that obviously got COVID. You have the mayor of New York that is violating his own rules. You have the thing that happened in Chicago where the Chicago mayor was, having it saying, "Hey, look, I'm my own person, right? I should be able to do what I want." But you're telling people what they can't do, treating people as if they're subjects, right, of leadership, not of the people, for the people, by the people. So then you talk about what they're doing in different areas, especially in Colorado, where the governor has come out and said, "I'm going to take away all the funding for those areas that don't follow my edicts." Right? So I want to do a parallel to that these are the liberal, leftists that frankly did the same thing when we said, "Hey, we're going to become a sanctuary city. We're not going to follow the Constitution. We're not going to follow the laws of the land." And when Trump said, "Hey, I'm just going to withhold money from you, federal money from you," what did they say, Max? What did they say? "Oh, this is unfair. You can't do that. Why would you do that? We're our own people. We're our own state," right? Yet we find ourselves in this position where now they're picking and choosing what laws they actually decide they're going to follow. So that leads me down to a message that I put out yesterday, and that is, why did the Holocaust happen?
No, come on. We're not.
No,
we're talking about Michigan. Today's podcast is about yesterday's Michigan hearing. We are not going down a Holocaust route.
I am.
This is insane.
I am actually going to take
this is the craziest squirrel. I sat back.
Shut up, Max, and let me actually go through and finish what I got to say, because I've been actually going through this process over the last couple of days. It's important that people understand, why did the people in Iraq not fight against the dictator that was there, right? Why did the Holocaust happen? It's because the good men did nothing. And while you think that this has nothing to do with what people are facing today, it has everything to do with what they're facing today. Because there's a fear of loss that overcomes people. Like I have to follow this rules because they're going to oppress me. They're going to shut me down. They're going to take away my business. And at least I have an opportunity to maybe make it through, right? So our government has proven that they have adopted an evil, self-serving, and corrupt environment. They have actually proven that. Look at what the FBI has done. And if we look at the last year specifically, there is a huge amount of fraud that has come out of the people that are supposed to be in our government and leading us. So we find ourselves in that place where we have to overcome these ideas that the government puts in front of us that shut down our communities. We have to overcome the fact that there's fraud when Bill Barr gets on TV and says, "Oh, I didn't see any fraud." Yeah, every single day we're pumping out more information about the fraud. They've shut down our communities. They've shut down our businesses. They've told people that they can't worship. They literally in school are teaching kids how to become gay in second grade. Hey, hold on to who you are. We are facing something right now that is similar to what happened in 1930 and 1940. We are facing the same thing that the Nazis did. We have people that are out there telling on people. They're literally telling on people, and businesses saying they're not wearing masks, they're not social distancing. You need to go in and shut them down. That's happening. And what happened in Nazi Germany before they started sending people to concentration camps? The same thing happened. Identical, actually. They had people in the community that were telling on their neighbors. They were reporting people for being Jewish. They were reporting people in different environments. That's exactly what was happening. So as we go through, what we actually put out there, what ideas we put out there for Conservative Daily, I think one of the things that's really important to me is that we understand that we do have a choice. There's millions of us. 74 million if you just count the people that actually are 100% real ballots, real people that voted for President Trump. Those 74 million people actually get to a place where they have the opportunity to speak up. And I think that as we walk through what happened in this fraud, this evidence that's out there, I don't know how people like Bill Barr, I don't know how the government is getting away with the things that they're getting away with. I don't understand it. And neither does nearly 50% of our community. So as we walk through some of the things that we'll walk through today, people are going to say, well, what do I do? I think we have a blueprint for what they can do. And that's one of the things that we'll talk about at the end. Okay, now, that was not a squirrel. That was very relevant to what we're talking about right now. Very relevant. Okay, I'm done.
Are you done?
I'm done.
Sure. Okay. So today's episode is about yesterday's Michigan hearing. It was going on while we were broadcasting yesterday. And so I wanted to cover some of that. But first, I want to play a bit of James O'Keefe's latest reveal, because as we mentioned yesterday on the podcast, he was sitting on conference calls at CNN for 2 months, recording everything that they were saying. So I want to play this because this is going to get into why what was happening yesterday at the Michigan hearing isn't being shared by mainstream media outlets because they don't want to give Trump a platform. So let's go ahead and play cut 1.
Jeff Zucker, president of CNN, explains to his editorial team on the 9 a.m. call that we recorded that they should, quote, lean in to not normalizing Trump's erratic behavior. Listen to this.
Okay, I just want to reemphasize that, I think we cannot normalize what has happened here in the last week with Trump and his behavior. And I go back to what David Chalian said, that this is a president who knows he's losing, who knows he's in trouble, is sick, maybe is on the after effects of steroids or not, I don't know, but he is acting erratically and desperately, and we need to not normalize that. This is what we've come to expect for the last 3.5 years, 4 years, but it clearly is exacerbated by the time that we're in and the issues that he's dealing with. And I think that we cannot just let it be normalized. He is all over the place and acting erratically, and I think we need to lean into that.
The Trump media, moves immediately from, okay, well, never mind that unmasking was, found to be completely nonsensical, to the latest alleged scandal, and expects everybody to just follow suit. So I don't think that we should be repeating unsubstantiated smears just because the right-wing media suggests that we should. Frankly, if we've made any mistake, it's that our banners have been too polite, and we need to go well after Lindsey Graham. There's a ton going on. Let's stay strong. Let's stay newsy. Let's stay urgent. Let's be smart. There is a lot of news out there, and Lindsey Graham really deserves it. Each of these so-called scandals for Trump, each of these things, we should just once again be careful to say that this is the one that is going to undo him with his voters. And to respond to David Chalian's points about politics, I don't know why we would expect any of these politicians to have a conscience and or expect that politics wouldn't be completely hypocritical. And for us to expect anything else would be naive.
So that is a bunch of little clips that Project Veritas has compiled. They say they have more, but showing that CNN is manipulating what people see based on the political narrative that they want to present. Something we knew was happening, but this is happening all the way at the top with Zucker, the head of CNN. They're having these conference calls saying, okay, let's go after Lindsey Graham today. Let's make sure that Trump doesn't have a platform. Yesterday we saw a video that Project Veritas released telling that CNN was telling their people to make sure everyone understands that the last time an election was contested like this, the experts said that it potentially led to 9/11. So before we get into the Michigan stuff, the stuff that CNN, MSNBC, all of the basic all the basic channels, CBS, Fox, NBC, all the things they're not covering, right? Recognize that they're not covering this for a reason. They understand that this is happening, but they don't want people to know the truth. So I want to start with this. This was a woman. Let's go ahead and put up image 1. Her name is Dr. Linda Lee Tarver. She is a career Michigan public servant working decades at the Secretary of State's office in Michigan. And she testified yesterday. She was only supposed to testify for 3 minutes, but they asked her so many questions because she is truly an expert when it comes to election fraud. She was there for 30 minutes. We don't have time to go through all 30 minutes of the testimony, but I wanted to play a couple of bits of it. I want to play her opening, and I want to play her response to the first question.
And we'll put it up, the entire thing, we'll put it up on the on multiple places as well, on Parler and and Facebook, so you can watch it later.
So let's play her opening. This is part of her opening. Let's play cut 2.
People have been prosecuted in Michigan over the years as a result. Ballot stuffing, ballot curing, and complete fraud in the issuance, handling, and processing of ballots has not been addressed, and no election after 2020 should be considered fair unless we get this right this year. The complete hate, disdain, and apathy for Republican poll challengers is but one way of how elections are stolen in Michigan. Before COVID-19, and I'm talking to the Democrat in the House, and in every election in the last 25 years, Republican poll challengers were removed by the police, especially in Pontiac. MCL 168.733 says, the election inspectors and other election officials on duty shall protect a challenger in the discharge of his or her duties. Shall protect is not an option. Shall protect. It is never done in the urban areas. Never, never, never in the urban areas. In the 34 years I've been working for the state of Michigan, and certainly not the 29 years I've been working at the Secretary of State. It also says in subsection 4, a person shall not threaten or intimidate a challenger while performing an activity allowed. You shall not threaten or intimidate. It is a misdemeanor for what they have done, these inspectors, to continue to intimidate and throw out Republican poll challengers. It has been going on too long. 71% of Detroit precincts, our largest city, cannot be recounted. As always expressed as minor clerical errors, these are not minor. There are touch points in the process for these ballots to be, and the accounting to be done, those ballots to be open. In order for this fraud to be corrected, we need a complete audit. You need to have optics on it. This has always been done in communities of color. It needs to stop. Enforce the laws and ensure, bring in independent inspectors. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
So you could hear during that, Joe, that they said you have 1 minute left. The interesting thing is that she then proceeded to talk for another 30 minutes because after her original 3 minutes, she's allowed to have open-ended answer anytime anyone asks her a question. So she was a great witness. And again, we're not going to be able to play all 36 some odd minutes of her testimony. But she's an expert. She knows what she's talking about. And frankly, it was great to have an African-American woman up there explaining about the fraud that's happening in inner cities, because that stops the Democrats from painting a narrative that this is a white versus black issue. She's up there and repeatedly throughout her testimony, she's like, in inner cities, people who look like me are doing this. I thought it was particularly powerful that she was able to get up there, because Democrats are always looking to make this a race issue. When the Wayne County Board of Canvassers didn't want to certify, everyone went after them and called them racist and said that they didn't want black people to be able to vote. So it's excellent that the GOP put her forward.
Yeah, listen, she was very articulate and did not have a biased position. This is what you look at when you look at a nonpartisan individual standing up there saying, look, all I care about is free and fair elections. That's it. That's all I care about. That's all I've worked for. That's all I've worked towards every single year that she's been a part of this. She's an expert in that field. Yet she said this is criminal. What they did was criminal. And we should be charging them as such. These people should be charged. Yet we're choosing not to charge. Again, going back to what I said at the very beginning, we have leaders that are persecuting, not prosecuting. They are picking the laws that they want to follow. They're picking the laws at which they can actually hold people accountable, and they're attacking people based on their political ideology. That is not America. That is not a constitutional republic. That is a communist nation. That is a communist nation, just so you know. Communist nation, that's what a communist nation looks like. And she's pointing it out.
The problem that she's pointing out, and we'll play her next bit, because the first question she's asked is what kind of audit does she want? And she responds that she wants a forensic audit.
Right.
So let's actually play that, and then we'll expand on what she's talking about, the reason that 71% of the ballots in Detroit in those areas are not recountable. Let's go ahead and play cut 3.
Thank you, Dr. Tarver. I appreciate you coming, and I appreciate your testimony. Also very compelling. Do you have, when you speak about an audit and a complete audit, what would you see as the appropriate type of audit? Would it be a forensic audit? Would it be a hand recount of ballots? What would you like to see done?
71% of Detroit cannot be recounted, which means that the boxes that the ballots are in cannot be opened. 71% is egregious, and it happens in these communities of color. So if you cannot recount it because of a, quote, clerical error, according to Secretary Benson, these are not clerical errors. These ballots are hidden in. You can hide them in there until you're able to open them. There are processes that have been allowed so that when you cannot balance your precinct, you can go to a counting board or a board to evaluate them. At that time, those errors are supposed to be fixed, and they can open up the ballots. The only way to open up the ballots right now to get your ideas on it is for you to do a complete forensic audit that needs to be done to open up those ballots. Because a recount is only going to get you 71% of the ticker tape that says these are the numbers, and there are bad ballots inside. You cannot look at the ballots if you do a recount. You need an audit in order to do a forensic audit to look at those ballots. Some absentee ballots that were coming in were not even folded. How do you have a pristine, flat ballot without being folded if it was an absentee ballot? And therein lies some of the problems. And once it goes into the machine multiple times, you cannot open up the case. If you put the wrong number on the seal, you can't open it up. If you put in, if it doesn't balance, you can't open it up. And so there's problems with what's going on. We need to open up those ballots for the integrity, because we cannot move forward in any further election.
So what she's explaining is very important, Joe. It's the idea that if they commit fraud and then don't catch themselves and don't fix their own fraud, then eventually it becomes too late and they can't actually do anything about it.
But the reality of it is then you have to say fruit of the poison tree. At that point, you have to throw the election out. And I think that's what we're getting to in these multiple states, is that we have to be able to throw out these elections and say, hey, listen, these are fraudulent elections. These are elections that have massive, massive problems, right? And we're getting to the root of it. But today's the second, third? What's the day today? Second? Today's the second.
The second.
Yeah. So we have 11 days. I mean, we're running out of time. I mean, we've got to get to the place where the legislative bodies are actually having courage. And I think we have to push people to have courage in these areas, right? You have to have courage. These leaders have to stand up. They have to stop this. That's great testimony. If it falls on deaf ears, or those people don't have the courage to stand up to these people that would run in and threaten them and their families, then we're done. We're done as a country if we can't actually get them to stand up for what's right.
There was one guy who spoke yesterday. I didn't have a clip, but it was good at the end. He noticed that they weren't paying attention to what he was saying. They weren't paying attention to what he was saying, and he stopped himself and he asked them, "Are you even going to remember my name in 30 seconds? Are you even paying attention?" So yeah, there was one Democrat there apparently. There might have been more than one there at different points. It's interesting because you have to put the testimony forward. The media says there's no evidence of fraud. As the Trump campaign produces affidavits, they say, oh, affidavits aren't evidence of fraud. Then the Trump campaign produces witnesses to testify in person under oath. And they say, oh, well, no, just because they saw it doesn't make it true. And then the media doesn't show the clips, doesn't let anyone know about it. So I want to explain how this happened, because we talked about what happens in Detroit a couple times, but I want to lay it out. In Detroit, 71% of the precincts are not recountable. What does that mean? That means that after the count was done in those precincts, the count was unbalanced. They did not basically correct the count. The number of ballots cast did not match up with the number of voters who cast ballots. It's a huge red flag. And what the Democrats say is, oh, it's just a couple of clerical errors. But a clerical errors in 71% of precincts, that's pretty significant. So if you deliberately commit fraud, right, the way Michigan's system works is it's then up to those same people to cure the process, to make sure that there is not an unbalance, that the number of votes match up for the number of voters, and to ensure that when that moves up the chain of command, the ballot box remains countable. Because as long as it's out of balance, you cannot go back and recount the ballots. What she's talking about, what Dr. Tarver's talking about, is systemic, historical fraud, where people deliberately don't care, either through apathy, like they don't care, or malice, where they're trying to make sure that there's fraud. They don't make the corrections when they can. So when it gets up the chain of command, when it gets to the Wayne County Board of Canvassers, they actually don't have the power to go in. That was the big fight in Wayne County when you had the two Republicans who were saying, well, I don't want to certify. They had their families threatened, ultimately certified, then they tried to rescind. Michigan law doesn't give them the power to actually go in there and check and see why the mistakes are there. It's expected that once it reaches them, everything should be worked out. So it's an interesting phenomenon, because you have fraud, and then the very people who are able to correct the fraud, to root it out, and to make sure it doesn't move up the chain of command are the ones committing it, right? So they have no reason, they have no reason to correct their own fraud. So what ends up happening is it's almost like circular logic, where you can't go in and check it because the fraudsters say you can't. It's very, very strange. But what she's talking about is opening the ballots. And there was an interesting, we don't have a clip of it, but again, go back and watch the 36 minutes. There was a Democrat on the panel who was basically saying, well, don't you agree we should change the law? And she says quite simply, no, we have plenty of laws on the books and they're violating them. We need to enforce the laws. Don't need more laws. So I thought her testimony was really, really powerful. Joe, what did you think of it?
I thought it was an amazing testimony, but I want to talk about the totality of what we're actually talking about, and the fact that they're ignoring math and science. I mean, that's what we keep coming back to, is the ignorance of these people that are just putting blinders on and saying, hey, look, nothing to see here, nothing to see here. And the media and technology companies are backing it up. The only reason, Max, that 48 or whatever, what's the percentage of people in America, nearly a third of Democrats feel like the election was stolen from Trump. But what is it?
So it's 73% of Republicans, not as much Democrats, but I think once you add everything together, it's like 47% of total people, somewhere in the 40s, believe that there's something funny going on with the election results.
So we know that the mainstream media is not talking about it. So we have this army of people. Remember the power that we were talking about before, the power of the people, the 74 million people that voted for President Trump, and probably half of the people that voted for Biden. So 20 million people, because I think that only like 30 or 40 million people probably voted for Biden. But let's say that it's 20 million more people. So we have 100 million people that think that the integrity of our nation is at risk, right? 100 million people, and that doesn't count kids and everything else. So just 100 million voters that think that our country is at risk. If we take that number, if we take that group of people, and we actually start holding people accountable and having our voice, actually getting out there and talking about and sharing what we're talking about right now. So you have to hit the share button, hit the share button, hit the share button, hit the share button, right? Got to hit the share button. Right? If we continue to be the ones that actually speak, then Twitter they'll have to ban all of us, and then we can move over to Parler anyway. But over time, that 47%, when they start seeing this actual fraud, will turn into 60%, 80%, 90%. Then it'll be undeniable. But right now we're dealing with experts that are coming out and speaking about what should never have happened. And yet they're saying there's nothing to see here. And we have technology companies and media companies that are like CNN that frankly are coming out and trying to create this swirling around what truth is. So I actually think that, Max, it's great to hear the testimony, but it's even more important that we do something with it. People are like, well, what can I do? Well, you can start by talking. You can start by actually saying something, getting out there and doing something, right? You start there. And if you start there, other people will follow you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my...
And that's what a lot of these people are doing. So this is obviously forward thinking, but we all need to make sure that we register as poll watchers, as poll challengers. That obviously doesn't change this, but we need to also make sure that this kind of stuff never happens again. So there's going to be a lot of things that we talk about forward thinking for future elections. But talking about it, making sure you reach out to your elected officials. Good time to mention, again, there's a link in our description to sign up for our email newsletter. We run fax blast campaigns to put massive amounts of pressure on elected officials to make sure that the Republicans hold the line and Democrats understand that if they go along with what they're doing, we're coming for them. So make sure that you click the link in the description, sign up for our email newsletter, and help join these Fax Blast campaigns, or just reach out in any way that you're most comfortable. Our Fax Blast system is really easy. Click of a button, it sends it to everyone. Or you can just reach out to the individual people that you want to reach out to. But that's the other part of it. And as we mentioned on the show yesterday, elected officials understand that when 10, 20, 30 people message into them, they assume that there are thousands back home who think the same but aren't saying anything about it.
Yeah, but every day, Max, we actually send to thousands of people, thousands of people.
Yes.
So this is, I mean, I have to tell you that the amount of people that we're actually pushing out and doing this for, it's a big number, right? So just become a part of that big number. There's other things that we're going to be doing, like building technology and things like that, to combat or becoming a battering ram to these walled gardens. So, I mean, eventually we got to start talking about that and how people can actually become a part of that kind of revolution as well.
So also make sure that you text FREEDOM to 89517. You'll get a text alert when our show goes live, because as we mentioned in the past, big tech companies, Facebook and YouTube, they don't like to give people alerts when we go live. They don't want people to know that our show is live. So make sure you text FREEDOM to 89517 and get your text alerts. This is another clip from yesterday's testimony. Someone explaining how they were there. They were supposed to observe, but they weren't actually allowed to see the ballots. Let's go ahead and play cut 4.
I was under the impression that as a poll challenger, our primary responsibility is to make sure before a vote is cast that that ballot is either in the registered poll book, the computer book, or in the paper poll book, of which anytime as a challenger I tried to look at the ballot and then try to verify it, I would get 2 or 3 of the poll workers literally screaming at me to get back 6 feet. However, we did not know that that had been overturned the night before, which would have been helpful. But at no time were we able actually to physically see the ballot and then see it in the poll electronic book. The person opening the ballot would probably be sitting where Senator Theis is, and the electronic screen that we were supposed to be watching is basically to where the committee clerk is. Now, I don't know if you guys got binocular vision, but I don't. So I cannot look at a ballot over here, run down to this screen and be able to see it and verify that it is the same. I did address that with them multiple times, and they told me, sorry, I should have planned better. Plan better as to how? Needing binoculars? I mean, we as a poll challenger are supposed to verify the name, address on the ballot to the electronic poll book. And if it is not there, then it is supposed to be in a paper poll book, of which there was a significantly large poll worker. Anytime that I said that is not in the book, when she would scan it, it would not come up on the screen, then she would basically hover over this paper book, sometimes checking something, and other times we could see that they did not check it. And then they proceeded to manually enter these into the electronic poll book, where then they would come up on the screen. Many of these papers were not absentee ballot, the yellow envelope, the standard ballot. Some of them were on printed paper, some of them were in white envelopes. Some of them had multiple papers attached to them, so then they would manually enter them into the electronic book.
So what she's describing is what a lot of people have described. So we've talked about a lot of the different types of fraud that they employed in Michigan, specifically in Wayne County, not just with the ballot dumps, which we'll get to in a second, not just with the electronic stuff, which we'll get to in a second, not just with the dumping the ballots in the boxes, the boxes that they set up, because they said, oh, it's too risky for people to have to go to their election office. We need drop boxes in every single neighborhood. Incredible stuff. And as Dr. Tarver mentioned, she mentioned in her beginning of her, in part of her question and answer testimony, that she knows clerks who have always come to her and say, listen, this guy dropped off 50 ballots. No way he's related to them all. When you have the drop boxes, you lose the ability for the clerk to see who's dropping off the ballots. And what Democrats convinced most people, apparently, is that the risk of contracting COVID-19 by going into your election office was far greater than the risk associated with ballot stuffing, with stuffing the ballot boxes with fake ballots or with harvested ballots. So amazingly, they're doing it again in Georgia. the Republicans are just going to roll over and let them set up all of those same fraud-ridden drop boxes where people can just shove as many ballots in. There's almost 1 million ballots have already been requested for mail. They're just going to do it again. They're going to keep doing it until elected officials stop them. And the only way the elected officials stop them is if we
stop them.
Force them to.
Yeah.
Is if we force them to, which is, again, what we're all about. It's incredible stuff, Joe. We heard this from multiple people. That they're there to challenge, and then they're deliberately put far away so they can't see anything. And then when they challenge them, they get kicked out. And as we heard from Tarver, the law says they're supposed to be protected. The whole thing was a setup. And there's been other things which we're not supposed to play because, oh my goodness, my son just ambushed me. Lots of things that we're not supposed to talk about, but it's go away, Max. Lots of things we're not supposed to talk about with like Detroit leaks. Anyone who plays that video gets a legal letter from the Detroit Attorney General. But it's this whole thing was planned from the start.
Well, I don't know if you just heard about this 3 hours ago, but Georgia Group, founded by Stacey Abrams, is under investigation for seeking out-of-state and dead voters for Georgia. Right? This is actually happening right now, and it was previously chaired by the Democratic Senate candidate Raphael Warnock. This just broke a couple hours ago.
Yeah, it was last night they announced it. They're claiming that they did nothing wrong, but Democrats are going to keep doing it unless you stop them.
And Max, this is where I get down to the fact of what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? What are we going to do? How much are we willing to sit back and say, hey, we'll just keep challenging it. We'll let the courts decide. Well, we already figured out that the courts are going to be more and more activist judges. They're not going to be actually. You have a 0% chance if you have a Democrat that sits on it of getting things overturned. You have a 50% chance of getting it overturned if there's someone that is more conservative sitting on the bench. Right? So at best, you have a 50% chance, right? So knowing that, how much longer are we as people going to be willing to wait before we actually act? How much longer?
Yeah.
And we can go back to the what happened with what are they? Not the Branch Davidians, the other one, the Bundys, right? When the Bundys stood up to the government, right, and got on horseback and actually said, no, you're not coming in here, that was a period in time where most Americans could say, hey, look, the government has gone too far. And they actually stood up to them, and nothing happened, right? When are we going to get to that place where we actually stand up? And we've talked on the show about Civil War, right? We've talked on the show about Civil War, that I think we're in the Civil War. It's probably a cold Civil War, but we're in a Civil War. What does that Civil War look like? Like, what does it look like right now? Who are we fighting? Who are we really fighting against right now? Is it all Democrats? Well, you already said that 30%, 40%, I don't know what the number is, but our news articles say 30 to 40% of Democrats feel that the election was stolen from Trump. So are we just going to start shooting at, and is it going to become a hot war? Are we going to actually then go to war with each other violently? Or are we going to get to the point where neither side really wants to have a fear of loss? Neither side wants to, have blood spilled against another American. Who is it that we're fighting against? Like, how do we get these leaders and these people in positions of power and authority and that are building these groups? How do we get Soros out of our elections? How do we get election companies not to be owned by private equity firms and foreign interests? How do we get to that place? How do we eradicate in a very short period of time? Because we're going to have an election next year. Right? Elections aren't every 2 years. Elections happen there's something that gets on a ballot every single year. So what are we going to do? How are we going to resolve this?
Yeah, well, I mean, you say, who are we going to shoot at? You can't shoot at the military because the military men and women, they're the victims in all this. Here's a clip of someone testifying that the military ballots that were coming in Michigan were Xerox copies and all seemed to go for Joe Biden. Let's go ahead and play cut 5.
Not one of the military ballots was a registered voter. And the ballots looked like they were all exactly the same Xerox copies of the ballot. They were all for Biden across the board. There wasn't a single Trump vote, and none of the voters were registered. They had to manually enter the names and addresses and a birth date of 1/1/2020, which would override the system and allow them to enter non-registered voters, of which I saw several that day. Throughout the day, that's how they would override voters that were neither in the electronic poll book or the supplemental updated poll book.
Thank you. So if we get into a civil war, we're not going to shoot at the military because the military just had their votes stolen. She just described that instead of being legitimate ballots, they were photocopies. The same photocopy of a ballot, all filled out for Joe Biden. Right. So leftists were stealing military votes. So you can't shoot at the military, right? We're not going to shoot at police officers. Police officers hate the defund the police movement. They didn't vote for Biden, right? So that's the kind of thing. That's the challenge of all this.
But these are cheats. These are liars, cheaters. I mean, this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a bunch of liars and cheaters. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and what do we do? Do we shoot at Dominion voting systems? I mean, you don't really shoot at a company. You don't really shoot at.
You asked me.
And just for all the fact checkers, we are not calling for anyone to shoot anyone from Dominion voting systems.
That was a joke.
Want to make sure that was in jest.
That was a little funny.
Because they're getting death threats now. That's what they're claiming. They're claiming that they're getting death threats, and they're trying to use that to get themselves off the hook. So we want to make sure that we're not included in that. That was in jest, completely in jest. But here's a clip. Here's a clip of a guy testifying yesterday that he actually saw Dominion machines that were connected to the internet, even though they shouldn't have been. Let's play cut 6.
So two of the main observations that I witnessed at the TCF Center on both the 3rd and the 4th when I was there, when I got down there on the morning of the 4th, I went back for an additional day because I witnessed so many irregularities when I was there on Election Day on the 3rd. Immediately upon walking in, I ran into Randy Bishop. And Randy owns the radio stations. He's very IT savvy. He said, Brian, I was here all night. What's going on here is unbelievable. He said, let me show you something right now before I leave. So he walked me over to the high-speed scanners and tabulators. And he said, see all these Ethernet lines running out of the tabulators? They're all bundled together as they accumulate, and then they're all connected to these routers. And then they all go to the main computer. He said, these are all hooked into the internet, and that is illegal, and it should not be happening because it opens them up to hacking. So I was aware of that immediately.
So they're all connected to the internet. They're not. They say they aren't. Right. That was one of the things that the United States government, when these government officials came out and said, "Oh, the 2020 election is the most secure election in history because none of the machines are connected to the internet." And then here's people testifying under oath. Oh no, they were connected to the internet. This one was connected by Ethernet. He said that there was another guy who testified that he saw laptops that were connected to Wi-Fi that were connected to machines. It's stunning stuff. And that video we showed yesterday of the guy who was taking the thumb drive out of one machine into another, we now have confirmed from Gwinnett County, the county where it was happening in, that yes, he was taking election results and he was putting them onto another computer to filter them, because you're not allowed to have Microsoft Excel on the computers that run the machines, run the actual voting software. It's supposed to just be a clean machine that has no external programs. Well, you're also not supposed to be able to take things off the machine, move it to another machine to reformat it. Right? That's how fraud becomes possible. You're not supposed. The rules state that you can't have that software on the same machine because it would be too easy to go in and edit the CSV file or the Excel file, however it's generated. But if you take it off one machine, put it on another, change it, and then pocket and then palm the thumb drive and walk out, that's just as bad, because who knows? He could have put that machine at a later date into another machine. Put that USB thumb drive into another machine and uploaded those altered results. We now have confirmation from Gwinnett County that he was doing that. The Dominion official that we covered yesterday on tape, he was doing that to filter voting results through Microsoft Excel, basically an Excel type program. And then as we showed, he palmed the drive and walked out of the room. Well, what he has in his hand now is a hard drive, which, as we already covered, these machines are programmed. Anytime you stick a USB drive in it, it automatically runs whatever's inside of it. This guy edited vote totals, put it on a drive, and walked out of the room with it. I mean, that's the level of fraud that we're seeing. And it's incredible.
Yeah.
You there?
Yeah. I think it is incredible. I actually think that, again, I'm gonna bring it up because in this show I think that we have an obligation to say, okay, here's the truth, here's what really is happening, but what are we gonna do about it? So I think that over the next couple of days we're gonna be pushing very hard. I've been talking to other leaders out there that are in news environments pushing very, very hard to have a 74 million people accountability deal across the country. Have at least 1 million people that actually show up to push on walls and demand accountability in all 50 states. I don't think we get 1 million people in Alaska, and I don't think we get 1 million people in Hawaii. And maybe,
definitely not Hawaii.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I want 1 million people in Arizona, given that most of the people there are over the age of 60. But yeah, I mean, get 1 million of those. Yeah, absolutely. But I think that we forget so much, Max, that the leaders that are in position of leadership, that we don't matter to them. Like you and I, the people that are listening, you don't matter to the leaders. You don't matter. I mean, I'll talk about Governor Polis in Colorado. Guy's worth $400 million. Do you think he wakes up any day thinking about the business that he shut down? We talk about de Blasio. Do you think he cares? Guy's worth what, a couple $100 million? Do you think he cares? You think he cares about you? Think he cares about the people in New York that are suffering when they can't feed their kids, or their business gets shut down and everything that they've actually invested in it is gone? Is anybody even talking about how to help these businesses that they're shutting down? No, it's not even out there. And frankly, many businesses are giving up. Many people in the community are giving up.
Yeah.
They're running away from those environments, leaving them to be just cesspools of just loony leftists. That's what has happened, is that we're actually running away from it. And I think that over the next week, we are literally going to push towards a 74 million person, right, protest. And I want every one of the people that are listening to understand that your job is to push it out there. We're going to get on the same page. We want everybody to see it. We're going to talk about it, right? Yeah. That's going to happen.
It's so we talk about how no one really wants a civil war, right? No one really wants it. But what you're talking about is, how do you get there? You get there. I mean, did you watch the latest Dave Chappelle special that he put? Not special, but the video he put out on Instagram.
No.
Joe.
No.
So on that, not really special, but he put out a video of one of his stand-up gigs, and he's talking about when he was a kid, he got cheated by a guy playing 3-card Monte or whatever they were doing, trying to hide the ball under the cups. He got cheated by a hustler on the street, and he lost the last dollar he had to his name at the time, being hustled on the street. So when someone else came up to him to play the game too, Dave Chappelle stepped in and said, "No, this guy's going to cheat you." And the hustler grabbed him, picked him up, and put him up against the wall, and said, "Don't ever get between a man and his meal." And Dave Chappelle said that the reason he probably didn't get killed in that moment was because the guy could genuinely see how afraid he was. But that whole theme of don't get between a man and his meal, if you want to know when violence is going to start, it's when these lockdowns keep going, right?
Yeah.
When you start getting between a man and being able to pay his mortgage, a woman and being able to put food on her table. This idea that the government officials who have steady salaries and they've already qualified for a pension, right, and they're completely protected.
Yeah.
And so it also goes to the election too, because when you see the election being stolen from you and you see the people being elected into office are promising to do more of the same lockdowns, even stricter lockdowns, that's going to, in my opinion, that's going to be the catalyst that leads to violence. Because just like what Dave Chappelle said in that story, when you never get between a man and his meal, never stop someone from earning a living. That it's tantamount to death.
Yeah.
When you stop someone from being able to provide for themselves.
And if we go back to when the revolution started back against the Redcoats, it didn't start because of taxes in the Boston Tea Party. It didn't start because of that. It started because the Redcoats shot protesters. That's why it started. That was a thing that led to them actually throwing the tea overboard. So I want to draw a correlation, if I can, Max, and that is they're not slaughtering us in the streets yet. That's why I say that this is just like 1930 or 1940 Nazi Germany, right? They're not slaughtering people in the streets yet, but they are. See, the slaughtering in the street that's happening right now is slaughtered under oppression and allowing evil to run rampant in our communities, right? They're indiscriminately allowed to kill people that are patriots. And if you dare to to stand up to their war propaganda, they just take more from you and say, now we're going to make your government structure in your community be oppressive to you because we're going to remove funding that is desperately needed by certain businesses. And not only are we going to actually punish the businesses that decide they're going to stand up to the edict, we're going to punish all of you so that you attack those businesses that stayed open. See, this is what Nazi Germany was. This is everything that it was, is what we are facing right now, which is why I tell everyone we have so much proof, but reality doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what reality is. It doesn't matter that the reality is that they're destroying our society. They're telling you can't pray. They're telling you can't own your business. They're telling you that on the education side that you don't matter as a parent. That's what they're doing. And I was sitting with someone in my office before this, Max, and now I'm on a tear. I was sitting with someone in my office, and I said to them is, my kids are grown, right? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, so I'm doing all of this for who? Who am I doing this for? I'm doing this.
Their kids?
I'm doing it for your kids. I'm doing it for their kids. I'm doing it for kids I'm doing it for my grandkids. I mean, see, my kids are, again, I've been blessed with things in my life. I don't have to be doing the things that I'm doing. I don't have to be doing this. I don't have to be talking to you. I don't have to be on this show. I don't have to be doing any of this. So I do it because it matters. This should matter. But we're not drawing the correlation to what happened in Nazi Germany and what's happening right now. And too many generations, too many years have passed from people having to die on the beaches of Normandy to protect that freedom. Too many years have gone by where we haven't had massive sacrifice by the American people out there defending our country. I believe that that's the problem. That's why you got soy boys and all these other guys out there that are saying, oh, peace, love, unless you disagree with me, and then I'm going to come kill you and hit you with bricks and bottles of frozen water. That's what they're doing. We're allowing communism to come into our country, and we are acting as if we are the Jews. Americans, patriots, we are the Jews. We are the people that they want to hurt. We are the people they want to put in camps. I didn't say it. They did. They want to reprogram us. We need to think like them. What did CNN say? What did Zucker say? Oh, yeah, he's off his rocker because he's talking about patriotism. We don't need patriotism. We need globalism. How many of you signed up for globalism? Max, did you sign up for globalism? Whose daddy are we? Did we sign up to be their daddy? Did we sign up to take our hardworking money and become slaves to the rest of the world? Do you think that's what's happening right now? If you don't, I don't know how to help you. But I know that I pay 40% taxes. 40% of every dollar I make goes to the government. For them to do what? Turn around and say they want to enter the Paris Accord? First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to re-enter the global environment. And I'm going to have these radicals in positions. That's what Biden stands for. They're stealing our voice, Max. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. And I'm pissed off at the fact that we're not pissed off to the point where we're actually willing to stand up. 74 million of us. I'm pissed off that tech companies that we stay on Facebook. And we're on Facebook now, and we're building technology away from it. But we're still there. We're funding these jackhats. We are. Oh, see? I said jackhats. Good job. Ah, that's good. I missed it. Yeah. So this is the thing that I want to push hard on people. Courage is as infectious as fear, Max. Why we talk about these things, we talk about truth because we want to bring people to a place where they feel like they're not alone. But now we get there, we can't think, we're not helpless, we're not hopeless. We can actually do something. We can actually do more than these derelicts that were out there looting and stealing and creating this false propaganda and indoctrination of how poor me. Because 300 years ago, you did this to me. Well, guess what? My brother was killed by a police officer. You don't see me running around saying all police people are bad. And I could tell you about things that happened when I was a kid. But I don't walk around saying, oh, man, if you only knew, poor me. Right? No, I picked myself up. I created success for myself. I focused on what I wanted to do, and I worked hard to get there. No luck involved. All hard work. But yet we're just sitting on the sidelines, just saying, nothing we can do about it. Yes, we can. These derelicts do not rule the day. They don't. And I'm not going to pander to them. And I don't want you to pander to them. I don't. I want to fight against it. I want to stand up. And I'm not saying that we have to shoot at anyone. No, we don't have to do that at all. We just have to be there, be present, and let them know that we're not going away and that Joe Biden is not going to be our president because we're not going to allow communism to actually rule the day. We're not a democracy, people. We are a constitutional republic. We've never been a democracy. Never, ever, 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 ever. Yet that's all these leftists actually talk about, and people on the right talk about the democracy.
So I want to just clarify something. This is just a pet peeve of mine. Every republic is a constitutional republic because the Constitution is just the document that says how the republic should operate. So there's no such thing as a republic without a constitution because then it would just not exist. So that's just a pet peeve of mine. Yeah, we are a constitutional republic. Every republic technically is, unless for whatever reason they're a republic that operates without a guiding document. So we're almost out of time, but I want to play this last clip because this woman might be my favorite woman, and I don't even know her name. So anyone who knows this woman's name, mention it in the comment section. I thought she was great. I wanted to play a bit of her testimony from yesterday. Let's go ahead and play cut 8.
This is the winner who won the election before it was cheated, before it was fraudulently cheated. It was cold and calculated fraud. And as a sidebar for Senator Santana, if Black Lives Matter, why did you skip me? Well, anyway, let me get on. Senator McBroom, sir, when I first saw your name, 2 things instantly came to my mind. 1, will you sweep my testimony under the rug like the other people have done, such as Dana Nessel, who's in the fraud, check, Governor Whitmer, fraud, check, and all of the above, check. Or will you sweep me off my feet by taking my testimony as facts rather than fiction? My name is Artesia Bomber. I am an adult citizen, resident, state of Michigan, also a registered voter. I was trained and credentialed to be a poll challenger for the November 2020 general election. I witnessed many election irregularities and violations of Michigan election law, and I hope that my statement is taken seriously. I am sharing this information under the penalty of perjury that if I testify, I can be locked up if I'm telling a lie, which I am not. On November the 3rd, 2020, between 9:30 and 10 p.m., I reported to TCF Center. I was assigned to 2 separate tables, absentee voting county board, 123 and 120. I immediately noticed things were not normal. Election workers were allowed to wear Biden T-shirts, blue face masks, the ones I recognized on Gretchen Whitmer's face in some of her interviews on Charlie Langston's show. I also saw poll workers wearing Black Lives Matter face masks, which is a political movement. Joe Biden is moving to defund the police. Thank you very much. I am not passing judgment on this because I am a proud black woman from the city of Detroit. Welcome, my sister from the D.
Please direct your comments to the chair,
I know this because I've been strictly told not to wear anything of partisan related to my candidates for office. So election supervisors seem to be implementing a double standard. Election workers had jackets, backpacks, purses, etc. on the tables and on the floors. There was no system to check your personal effects. Some people even had coolers for food with them. I don't know what was in them. It could have been ballots for all I know. I observed an election worker pull out a ballot from an envelope where the circle was completed next to the name Donald J. Trump. I saw this with my own eyes, all this that I'm saying to you today.
So she's my favorite person, Artesia, one of my favorite people. I want to play a little bit more of her testimony because I just love her. I love the hat. I also love that she's going off on them wearing their candidate clothing, and she has the Trump hat, which I love it. I love everything about it. So before we end the show, I want to play the last bit of her testimony. Let's play cut 9.
Very top left corner of the ballot. Instead of processing the ballot, I saw the election worker push the ballot back in the envelope and put it in there in a black container on top of the table. I witnessed a meeting between election workers, team leads, where they gathered together and spoke at meetings that was in the left far hand side of the wall. The meeting ended in cheers. Woo! They were just super excited. At approximately 11:43 p.m., I heard one of the team leads yell, "This is our house tonight," and further yell, "They gonna do what we tell them to do from here on out." I took that as they're saying this is the Democrats' house tonight, and the Republicans, independent, or whoever is going to do what we say tonight. And might I add, I was a U.S. Taxpayer Party of Michigan candidate at that time, sir. I observed stations where election workers were working on scanned ballots that had issues that needed to be manually corrected. I believe some of these workers were changing votes that had been cast for Donald Trump other than Republican candidates. I observed ballots with cursive writing notes at the top right-hand corner. I observed a lot of them. Let's say maybe about 100 of them or more. I also observed these ballots did not have ballot codes on them. The one, you tear at the top, no ballot code numbers. At approximately 4:03 a.m., a poll worker announced, 50 boxes of ballots coming in. Election workers loudly cheered, woo! Why? Did they know that they were for Biden? Was it a Biden dump? We don't know, huh? About 4:50 a.m., I witnessed a man spraying a chemical inside the ballot. It could have been air, but I also saw him put whiteout tape up inside of there, and he was walking around with this whiteout tape during the whole night. I have witnesses. If you need to call on them, their name is Cheryl Constantino, Linda Sawyer, Judy Jump, Debbie Swaff, and Marlene Benser, including myself, Artesia Bomber. I can't get all into this
Thank you.
because I probably got a few more seconds, but let me tell you, it was voter fraud at its finest, pure and calculated fraud. And I wouldn't be surprised if people up here was involved. But this young man right here, Senator McDaniel, Donald, I got to give you kudos. I see you're interested in this. And Senator Thies, I have to give you kudos because I see you're really paying attention. I wish Senator Lucido was here because I say he's paying attention. And now I think you will pay attention. And I plead the blood of Jesus over this fraud, and that everybody that was part of it and know about it will be convicted, and they soul and they spirit, they won't sleep, they won't eat until they come right. Thank you, Jesus. Amen.
Thank you.
Love this woman. Love this woman.
So she is my favorite.
If you don't invite God to the party, he can't show up, and she invited God to the party right then. She invited Jesus to the party.
Mr. Producer, I want to see if we can get her on the show. I like her. She's feisty. I think that's what we need. And I love how she called out people that weren't paying attention. So we're going to see if we can get her. I have to go back and listen to see her last name. Her first name, Artesia. I imagine that we can find her, but I'd love to have her on the show, even just for a little bit. So we're going to try and make that happen because she's my favorite person from the whole hearing yesterday. She was great. Joe, final word as we wrap up the show.
We're going to do something. We're going to do something together. We're going to actually start talking about it. We'll talk about it now, but my guess is somewhere on a Wednesday or Thursday of next week, we're literally going to come out. 74 million people minimum are going to come out of their houses, and we're going to gather. We're going to shut everything down, right? And we have to get away from Facebook and Twitter and all these guys that are weaponized against us. We have to move over to Parler. So Max is at Max McGuire. I am at Joe Oltmann. We have at Conservative Daily on Parler. We're also on MeWe. We're going to walk away, and I think that the walk away movement has to happen. But we're going to organize first. So people are asking, what can we do? What can we do next? I got to tell you, the thing that we're going to do next is we're going to stand up, and if we have to push on the buildings that they're in, push on them, literally push on them. Have millions of people in every state push on them. That's what we have to do. They have to hear our voice. Because right now, the mainstream media is not letting your voice be heard. And they stole the election, which means they stole your voice, which means we're in a communist society. How do you feel about that? So time to stand up, folks.
Well, if you like the show and you want to help grow the show, make sure that you like, comment, and share on YouTube. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications. We go live on Facebook and YouTube Monday through Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Today we were conflicted with Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood's press conference. That happens sometimes, but we go live every day, 2 p.m. Eastern, so make sure you like and follow our Facebook page, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube to check us out there. But also, very important, if you haven't already, go to the link in the description, subscribe to our audio podcast on Apple Podcasts, and help us rise up through the rankings. And if you have time, it only takes a couple seconds. Leave us a good review. It helps us a lot as well. And if you don't have an iPhone, a MacBook, an iPad, you can find the show on Google Play Store, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, or Podbean. All great places. If you text FREEDOM to 89517, we'll give you an alert when we go live with the show. Again, because Facebook and YouTube don't always do it. And also, we have a link in our description for our newsletter. That's how we're going to let you know as we build out these platforms, as we get off of Facebook. That'll be how we let people know, especially if we get kicked off of these for one reason or another. So make sure that you subscribe to our email newsletter. Again, link in the description. And of course, before we go, Mr. Producer, put up the shirt. This episode is brought to you by the Conservative Daily Store. Our Come and Take It Christmas shirts are selling like hotcakes. I don't even know what that means. I've never bought a hotcake. And I've never seen a run on hotcakes, but they are selling like hotcakes, and they are modeled after the Texas Revolutionary flag. Come and take it, but instead of a cannon, we have a Christmas tree. Make no mistake, people, the Anthony Fauci's of the world, the leftists of the world, they want to cancel Christmas. They want to stop you from celebrating the birth of Christ. So purchase this T-shirt, help support the channel, and show the world that you will not allow them to cancel Christmas. If you purchase it now, standard shipping will arrive before Christmas, but hurry up. We only got a couple more weeks. So check out that link and help support the channel. That's going to be it for this edition of the Conservative Daily Podcast. Again, my name is Max McGuire.
And this is Joe Oltmann.
And remember that the fight to take back our country clearly is not over yet, but the only way we win is if we all stand up and fight together.